You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, presented, of course, as always, by DraftKings. I am Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive line. By the way, it would be really weird if somebody else hosted the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, wouldn't it? I am Ross Tucker, the former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, Washington, Dallas, Buffalo, New England, Cleveland. Now I get to just talk about football for a living, which is great, in large part thanks to you and those of you that go the extra mile. It's Thursday, which means A, we got Greg Cosell, and B, tomorrow I'm giving out winners. Someone that spreads the word via social media, at Ross Tucker NFL or at Ross Tucker Pod. I get great pleasure from being in my office right here, signing an autograph, sending it to you in the mail. I don't have anybody else to do it. It's just me. It might take me a month, but I'll do it. Spread the word via social media. Best way to do that is to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple, and then send me a screenshot, ross@rosstucker.com, or just comment or engage with any of the live streams for the show that I know are getting more and more popular. Then we've got the sponsor confirmation email winner. Pretty easy, right? westshorehome.com/Ross, the free estimate, or get the best Valentine's Day gift you could ever get someone at myfrontpagestory.com. Either one of those are going to be the winner the next couple weeks. I'm telling you that much right now. YouTube shout out, always cool. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Check it out. You can see all the people that you hear all the time, see them in video, see the highlight clips of the shows, the other shows. Maybe you don't listen to the other shows. You can see the best of the best with the highlight clips. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Patron of the day, Andrew Ducote. Ducote. Welcome to the family, Andrew. Patreon.com/RT Media. The best place to see all of Fezzik's bets and my bets for the Super Bowl. Patreon.com/RT Media. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, let's do this. We're coming down to the end now. Not too many games left to break down, including just one, but conference championship games are a big deal. So
Yeah.
I've got questions, and I'm hoping you have answers. Let's start with the game I was on the sideline for, the AFC Championship game. Now, Mike MacDonald, who I might ask you about later, just got the Seahawks head coaching job, had an incredible year. What did you see in particular, Greg, on the first 2 Chiefs drives? Because they marched 86 yards, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. They were running it pretty effectively. Obviously, Mahomes to Kelsey was magical. Was there something there where Andy Reid kind of had a jump on McDonald those first 2 series that you noticed?
Well, I can speak to what the tape showed as far as the Chiefs' approach. Their pass game approach was for Mahomes to play with timing and stay in rhythm. It was all quick games to sustaining throws. You probably saw that right away, those quick screens, get the ball out of his hands, not allow any pressure to become a factor at all. Play sustaining football. Mahomes was not waiting, and they weren't calling plays down the field. They were not looking for Mahomes to be in the pocket for very long at all. And they had some success with it. Obviously, they went for that 4th down, and that was a great play by Mahomes because that is not the design of the play to throw it to Kelsey in the middle of the field. That was probably the 3rd option on the play because they've run that play numerous times in short yardage, and he's not the option at all. And they had some success running the ball early. We've talked about Pacheco, particularly over the last 2 months of the season. He's a downhill runner, gap scheme runner, trap runner. He attacks. That's the way they ran. And I think, quite frankly, the Ravens were trying to figure out what their best personnel package was against the Chiefs' multiple tight end sets. You sort of have to figure that out. You have a thought going in, but then you have to try to figure that out as the game goes on because the Chiefs really have evolved throughout the course of this season into a multiple tight end personnel offense. They play meaningful snaps out of 12 with 2 tight ends and 13 with 3 tight ends. Then you have to decide how you want to play that.
Okay, so then after those first 2 touchdown drives for the Chiefs, the Chiefs only got 3 points the rest of the game. Did you notice adjustments by Mike MacDonald, Greg? What changed from the first 2 drives where the Chiefs went up and down the field for 2 touchdowns to the rest of the game where the Chiefs only got a field goal, and even that field goal, Greg, was after the Van Noy and Travis Jones penalties?
Correct. I would say they played the run much better. They started to dominate up front. This was, by the way, this was not a great game for Trey Smith. He's a very good player, but he did not have a really strong game, and he got handled a bit in one-on-one matchups. Justin Matabuke became a dominant force. I thought that the 2 linebackers started to get, Smith and Queen, who are both really good players, started to get a really good feel for the run game, and their key and diagnose was so good. They were getting clean in the hole. They could not get blocked. The Chiefs were really struggling with their run game. You probably saw this, Ross. They could not get them blocked in the run game. And then, of course, you had Kyle Hamilton, who was just making great plays all over the field. And the pass game pressure became a big issue. Normally, people say you don't blitz Mahomes, in the Chiefs pass game because he's had phenomenal success in his career. This was one of the few games in which Mahomes and the Chiefs passing game did not have much success versus pressure at all. And the Ravens did not pressure a high percentage, but when they did, they really caused problems. Keep in mind, in the second half of this game, the Chiefs only had 98 yards of total offense, and 32 of those came on that final play to Valdez-Scantling. So up until that point, they had 66 yards of total offense in the second half. They could not run the ball, and Mahomes was under constant pressure.
Wow. What about the other side of the ball? Because that was the one that's maybe gotten the most attention.
Yeah.
And that's really the battle of the brains between Todd Monken and Steve Spagnuolo. What everybody wants to know, Greg, and maybe you noticed something, maybe you didn't. It felt like a lot of gun and a lot of drop back pass from the Ravens. It didn't feel like, they obviously didn't run it very much with their backs, especially Gus Edwards. There were not a lot of designed runs. And even the passing game, it didn't seem like there was a lot of quick answers. No. Either that or Lamar wasn't seeing it. So what did you see?
Yeah, and again, I'm not one, and we're all on Twitter, on social media, because we have to be. I'm not one who pretends to know more than the coaches. I'm a process guy. When I see something like that, and I'll tell you a little more in a second, that's where I would love to be in the meetings leading up, because they obviously felt that what they did was the right approach. Now, keep one thing in mind. It's easy to say they didn't run the ball. The thing that struck me more than that when I watched the tape was how much they played out of 11 personnel, meaning 3 wide receivers on the field. 63% of their snaps. That's not what the Ravens have done all throughout the season. They have been a heavy, high percentage base personnel offense, whether it's 2 tight ends, whether it's Patrick Ricard. They've been a heavy base personnel offense. And that's why I would love to have been a fly on the wall during the meetings, because those guys are smarter than I am. They know more about their team and the opponent than I do. So they obviously felt this was the right way to attack the Chiefs' defense. Now, I will say this. The Chiefs did line up in heavy run defense fronts. They had a lot of 5-man fronts reduced, where you had a 0 technique, a defensive tackle right over the center. You had 2-3 techniques. I mean, it's tough to run inside against that. Now, I'm not saying you should never do it, and I know it's easy for people to say, oh, no, you still have to run it. Look, we can have that debate for the next hour, and we're not going to. But they clearly felt that was not the best way to play. Now, and because it didn't work, it's easy to say that it was a terrible game plan and they're stupid. I'm not going to go there. I can only tell you what the tape showed, and obviously they chose to play a certain way based on a lot of hours of work, and it didn't work, clearly.
So I might be able to provide a little bit of insight to that, in the sense that before the game, Greg, I asked Todd Monken about Mark Andrews, and I just said, will he be limited at all, or is he full go? And he said he's full go, but you probably won't see a ton of 12. You probably won't see a ton of 12 with him and Likely because we want to limit his reps.
There you go.
So they went into it. Now, what's interesting about that is they still would do a lot of 12 with Likely and Kohler, or 21 with Ricard and Likely when Andrews was out. But it's like Andrews was available. So I was thinking more 12 with Andrews and Likely, but Monken said he's full throttle, full go, meaning they didn't have limitation on what they were going to ask him to do, but they were going to limit his reps a little bit.
Yeah.
And they did limit his reps. He wasn't out there all the time. And so, Monken even said they weren't going to be in a ton of 12 personnel with both Likely and Andrews out there before the game, which I thought was interesting. I mean, that's the mindset they had going into the game.
Yeah, and there's always reasons why coaches do things, and it doesn't always work. Keep in mind, I know they played Ricard a lot during the season, and we know they had a good offense during the season. But the reality is when you play with Ricard, and you know this, Ross, you're essentially playing with 4 eligible receivers, not 5. Okay? Now, I know people listening can say, yeah, but that's what they did all season, and they averaged a lot of points. That's true. But they also were playing a really good defense that does a lot of things, and maybe they felt, or they clearly felt, because this is what they did, that they needed 5 eligibles, not 4, because Ricard's not a factor in the pass game at all.
Love talking with my guy, Greg Cosell. Love eating DoorDash. This weekend, I don't know what you're going to watch because there's no NFL football, maybe the Senior Bowl. At any rate, whatever you're doing, order in on DoorDash. Now you can root for my even money bets, your even money bets, while your food and drinks are on the way. That means burgers, chips, dips, soda, pizza, wings, so much more. And it's, of course, delivered straight to your door. I want to make sure we have time for the NFC Championship game, Greg. Let's start with the first half. Holy crap,
yeah.
Greg. I mean, that was absolutely a dominating performance by the Lions, really both sides of the ball. I mean, Purdy looked bad. The Lions were running all over him. It really is remarkable to watch that first half and see that the other team won the game.
I know, it's funny you say that, because I'm just thinking, wow, there's no way, because they were being physically handled. And normally when you're physically handling a team, that doesn't change. It's not as if they beat him with a couple of cool plays. They were physically handling them. The interior of the 49ers D-line was getting moved in the run game. That allowed the Lions to control the early possessions. It allowed them to run a lot of plays, and it dictated the pace and tempo of the game. You're an offensive lineman. When you are running the ball and moving people, I mean, that's the way you love to be able to play. And also, the 49ers got hurt a lot in their zone coverage concepts in the first half by the Lions passing game, because Ben Johnson is a master at attacking zone coverage with his route concepts and the spacing. So they were getting hurt in all areas.
Did something change on that side of the ball in the second half? I mean, obviously they weren't running the ball as effectively, but they were still moving it. And then Reynolds would drop a pass 2 series in a row to end the series, and Gibbs had the fumble. It almost felt like the Lions didn't have the chance to kind of sustain drives in the second half.
Yeah, and look, you start then getting into individual plays. As you get closer to the end of a game, individual plays become more significant as opposed to an overall game plan. So when you see Reynolds drop the 4th down play, when you see him drop that 3rd and 9 on the crosser, which would have been a big play in the game, and obviously the Gibbs fumble when he went the wrong way, and look, there's no question that long pass to Ayuk was lucky and a fluke. So, you start talking about individual plays, but and I thought one thing I did think, and I think this is something Kyle Shanahan normally does. I thought he stayed with the run game. And look, they started the first drive of the third quarter. They ran the football. Okay, he stayed with the run game. McCaffrey ended up with 20 carries in a game in which they were, clearly down, 24-7, I believe it was, going into the third quarter. And I think that was important because that's who they are. They're a sustaining offense. Their big plays come off run after catch, not because Purdy is driving the ball, 25, 30 yards down the field. That's not Purdy's game at all. And quite frankly, I didn't think Purdy played that well. He ended up making a lot of critical plays with his legs, and I think that was unexpected as well. He's not unathletic, as you know, but you don't expect him to make those kinds of plays. But he missed a lot of things. When I say missed, he didn't turn the ball loose within the context of their timing and rhythm pass game. And I guarantee Kyle Shanahan was not thrilled with that because that is really foundationally what they need to do because that's how they sustain offense. They use the run game and they use those quick rhythm throws. That's their offense.
Boy, a lot of good stuff there, Greg. I guess I feel like I want to ask you this, and I know we don't normally get into this stuff. I'm just curious about your opinion. Do you have an opinion, Greg, on the fourth down decisions by Dan Campbell? I know that's not watching the tape and breaking down the X's and O's, but you're a smart guy, and we've seen a lot more people.
Well, I appreciate that. I try to be anyway once in a while, Ross.
Yeah, a lot more people are going for on fourth down. I see you're wearing your Lions blue sweatshirt there, so you obviously approve of. Just curious your thoughts on that. I wrote my article this week for the 33rd team about, Greg, there were more fourth down attempts this regular season than we've ever seen for more higher conversion percentage from further to go. I mean, just curious your opinion.
This is not a cop-out, okay? And people are going to think it's a cop-out, and I know there were really strong opinions by really smart people in our business, who obviously thought it was horrible. I really don't get into that for this reason. And maybe, like I said, people listening now could say, oh, you're an idiot, and that's fine. But, I always assume, believe it or not, because I know what I do, Ross, and I know how many hours I put in watching tape, so I know what teams do. So I always assume that there's valid reasons why teams do things, that these are not random things that they choose to do, that it's not, oh, okay, on a whim, let's just do this. I assume that these things are well thought out. Yeah, could some things be spur of the moment? But it's spur of the moment with a foundation based on everything you've done. It's not just totally random. So I actually take the approach, believe it or not, because I know a lot of coaches that, they kind of know what they're doing when they work 16, 17 hours a day all year round doing this kind of stuff. So my gut reaction to plays that whether I agree or disagree, like, hey, when I'm sitting at home watching a game, do I say to myself, hey, I'd kick the field goal? But I don't view it as an egregious display of ignorance if they don't do that. You know what I'm saying? I view it as there's a reason that they're doing this that I don't know because I'm not involved in the process. So, that's the way I think of it. And I know some people are going to think, well, they were just wrong. And that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Very much agree. My what I said, Greg, is I'm just curious about the process.
So that's what I'm curious about.
I want to know, so 4th and 2 at the 28, is it just 4th and 2 at the 28? Our numbers say we should go for it rather than kick the field goal? And do the numbers take into account Badgley's an average at best kicker? Do the numbers take into account how much time's left in the game?
Right.
Do the numbers take into account that the field goal would make it a 3-score game, right? I'm just curious. All these teams, Greg, have their own proprietary models. They're not all reading from the same book of analytics, like it's a Bible verse, right? They all have their own model. I would love to know what goes into the model.
That's the way I think of it, Ross. I'm with you on that. I tend to think of it in those terms as opposed to, oh my God, they're idiots. I don't think like that. I think there's a reason they're doing it. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during the whole week when they're going through all these scenarios and trying to figure out each game situation. Look, obviously 27-10 is a whole different animal than 24-10. A 3-score game is different than a 2-score game because then the possessions get less for the Niners. So I understand both sides, but my immediate reaction isn't to say they're idiots.
Real quick, Greg, the Seahawks have a new head coach, Mike
Yep.
MacDonald, the Ravens D coordinator. What have you noticed from him the last couple of years? What are the Seahawks getting?
Yeah, I mean, I love what he does on defense. Even the year he spent in Michigan, I remember watching their tape because they had a lot of defensive guys coming into the league and saying to myself, wow, Michigan does a lot of cool stuff. And then I go, oh, yeah, Mike MacDonald's there. He's an NFL coach. So, I mean, obviously, as an X and O defensive game planner, I think he's really, really good. I don't know Mike MacDonald personally. Everything I've read is that he's got a great personality, relates to players exceptionally well. So, I think an infusion of young juice, as it were, for a team like Seattle, which is not a bad team in terms of personnel, is probably a good thing. I mean, I think ultimately, without knowing the individual, I say it seems like a really good hire to me.
He is the man. I love talking with him. We will be all in on the Super Bowl next week. Should be fantastic. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
Greg is so awesome. Almost as awesome as my new front door that I got yesterday, which was incredible. westshorehome.com/Ross. My wife is so happy. Man, I didn't know how involved it was to put a door in. Those guys are good, man. It's a big front door, and I guess we have like bricks involved, so it was complicated. Those guys absolutely crushed it. I don't know if they have the pictures up on my landing page yet, but go check it out, westshorehome.com/Ross. You can obviously already see what they did with the 2 upstairs bathrooms, but check it out because there'll be before and after pictures of the door, me and pictures of me and the installers, and even a video from me talking about the process. It was great. westshorehome.com/Ross. Remember, all you need to be the spread the word winner is get the free estimate. westshorehome.com/Ross.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross. Well, you and Greg were just talking about the Seahawks. They hire Ravens defense coordinator Mike MacDonald as their next head coach.
So it's interesting. I wouldn't say I know Mike well, but I talked to him for the first time on a Zoom because I did that Ravens-Cardinals game on CBS this year, Jack. And so then before the game, I saw him on the field and talked to him. And then I ran into him again on the field before the AFC Championship game. So I've had 2, pretty lengthy, I would say, one-on-one conversations with Mike MacDonald. Really impressive. Really, did not play college football, dove right into the coaching after high school ball. I think maybe as a student assistant, wherever he went. I got to look that up, but I'm always respect and appreciate guys that kind of had to go the long, hard way. They didn't start higher on the ladder because they were a coach. Because they were a player. And we talked a lot actually on Sunday, Jack, about the interviewing process. And, if they had won, he would not have been able to interview in person this week. So it makes you wonder, would the Seahawks have still waited for him or not? You just don't know. Which, by the way, how stupid is that you might not wait a week or two to, confirm the guy that you want to hopefully be your coach for the next 10 plus years. You can't wait a week. The process is still flawed, and I wrote about that last week for the 33rd team. Hopefully you guys check out my articles because I feel like it's the only time I'm quote unquote using my Princeton, but absolutely check it out. But I think Mike MacDonald, he's only 36. He's very, very impressive. You know what Mike MacDonald should do with his family? They should celebrate, Jack. And they should celebrate with DiGiorno. Because DiGiorno knows that planning a perfect party on a budget isn't easy. You need the best setting, the perfect squad, the ideal eats. Luckily, you're a Game Time mastermind. And you know that grabbing DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza can bring home a dub because it's packed with half a pound of cheese sauce, other toppings, and comes at an incredible price. Make the game-winning call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It is not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Packers hire BCHC Jeff Heffley as their new DC, while the Titans poach DB coach Denard Wilson from the Ravens be their new DC. A lot of acronyms I enjoyed there.
Yeah, really. So what's interesting to me there is that Denard Wilson is not staying with the Ravens. Does that mean the Ravens have another in-house guy that they're going to go with? Which would mean that that's two teams in a row, the Eagles and the Ravens, that went with somebody else other than Denard Wilson, which I find interesting. And then the Jeff Hafley thing is a much longer discussion. And Emory and I might talk about it on Monday. It's not a good look for college football that a Power 5 head coach is leaving to be an NFL coordinator. We'll get into that a little bit more later. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out to myfrontpagestory.com. You guys I love. So show it. myfrontpagestory.com. BackOfficeSchedule.com, SteakhouseSports.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.